we should start with you first. Okay, we are live back with FPL Script Season 3, Episode 19 in the 24-25 season. This is Double Gaming 24. We got news today that we're going to get a Double Gaming 25. We'll talk about that in a moment. We'll also just briefly review our Gaming 23 teams. You had a pretty good game week. How was it, JD?
Hi everyone. So I guess the bar for having a good game week has been substantially lowered because it's a 3.3 million game week rank, as you can see. But yeah, it didn't go too badly. It was going better when Flecken and Vandenberg still had their clean sheets. But then SA decided to change that. So that was really upsetting. But yeah, I mean, NDI is the only positive because I think Isaac was more than 100% owned. So it was actually detrimental to have him outscore Salah. And Gordon, again, Mbumo got more points. So it's just upsetting at this point. So yeah, that's about it. I think NDI, that's the only thing I can be happy about. What about you?
Me, I had nothing to be happy about. I had 56 points. Odegaard, sick, subbed for Munoz. Went Allison. That was -1 on Flecken. That also has ruined my complete and utter FPL season in such a depressing way. Like, I just think my season's finished because I just used 2 free transfers on that. And then I had to use another free transfer on DCL, who you can't even see in the screenshot. I couldn't even bear taking a screenshot of that guy. And yeah, terrible. Then I went DCL Tendai this week, and then we had an absolute bomb. I mean, what do you think actually is the precedent for this Liverpool Aston Villa game being put on, provisionally Double Gaming 25? I did not see that coming. I know apparently there was, murmurs of it from the fixture chat gurus, but this completely caught me blindsided.
No, I'm with you there because I believe Ben had mentioned it, but I don't think he was as confident as people are making out to be now.
Yeah.
I just think he was mentioning it as one of the possibilities, which is, of course, I didn't even know if that was the case, but he at least was aware of a potential Double Gaming 25.
That's true.
I just think they've been burned too many times by scheduling fixtures later in the season where other things get mixed up. I'm not sure what those other things are, but essentially unexpected events maybe catch up to the schedule. Yeah. And maybe they want to stop rear loading players because they maybe have potential cup finals also to prepare for. True. So from that point of view as well, maybe they took a decision. I'm okay, so this is complete speculation, but I'm thinking, did 3 teams qualifying for round of 16 also have a part in that decision? The fact that we had 3 Premier League teams directly qualifying for round of 16, because I definitely think this Aston Villa and Liverpool being 2 of those, and that had the Gameweek 29 fixture could easily be a reason why that happened.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to be honest, I probably have to say skill issue on my part, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Not having enough FTs, right? I mean, that is a skill issue on my part as well. So I'm not
like,
I
should have just waited that 1 week, I suppose, with Allison.
Yeah.
Fine. It is what it is. I'm in the mud. All right. So, and what is the landscape now? This is a graphic kindly produced by Johnny C or FPL Spaceman. You can find him exclusively on Blue Sky nowadays, but also amongst Analytics Discord chats. He has presented the sort of betting or market, I guess, spread version of what the probabilities are of certain doubles and blanks going forwards. Although I think, the kind of provisioning of the fixtures in Double Gaming 33 and 36 is still not an exact science. So there's a lot of asterisks here. I think that the key thing, of course, is we now know really the landscape of 25, 29, 33. In terms of the impact of 33 coming out of the Carabao Cup game. So only Newcastle and Palace is provisionally going to move towards Double Gaming 33. We still have that set up as the expected largest Double Gaming this season. And obviously soft impacts here with the double Gameweek 25 that has spurred the whole discussion around assistant managering either in 24 and 25, because I think this week a lot of us were just expecting to triple captain 24. I've obviously used my triple captain, so I'm not part of this whole debate. But I mean, you've got triple captain, you've got assistant manager, Chip. What are your thoughts, I suppose, in the landscape now?
So it's really difficult because I was thinking initially when the news dropped that maybe there's a way that holding triple captaincy is still beneficial. Ultimately, you get to use it in some double game week, right?
Yeah.
The fact that one of the double game weeks later down the line has now become much smaller than what we thought it would be is a huge factor in deciding how we use our chips. But uh, running the chip timing tool on review has not been good for my mental health, at least, because I'm more confused than ever. If I look at pure expected value, but if I look at, let's say, intuition and again, maybe, let's say, more than intuition, I would say how many FTs I have, right? Because ultimately it's a case of there are two double game weeks back to back, which is not something we were expecting, or maybe some were, but on the fringes of FPL. So if you were not expecting any game week or back to back double game weeks this season, and it has happened now, the only thing that should change is the propensity to play the assistant manager chip in those game weeks. And so I would much rather spend a free transfer on an assistant manager because the EV is so much compared to spending free transfers on players. So that's really about it. Why I'm thinking about AM24, because if I run specific uh, combinations of chips on review, it's very difficult, right? Because Game Week 36 is still not in the horizon, so
True.
We don't get to see. And even if it does get into the horizon, I mean, there's still 3 weeks, so there's still the impact of whatever chip we do end up playing. But okay, fine. Let's assume for now that 37, 38 is fairly menial from that point of view. So 36 is potentially going to be bench boost. So it's either going to be wildcard 31, bench boost 33, or it's going to be wildcard 35, bench boost 36. So if it's bench boost 36 because we expect a smaller double game week, I don't know how to compare the chips like for like. So I just think, I'm rambling, but the short of it is I still think AM24 makes sense intuitively. The only other alternative is triple captaincy 24, AM25. And while it does sound very appealing, because the fact is Salah has more expected value than David Moyes for game week 24. So that's straight up you're gaining EV there. And then in 25, you activate it anyway. And of course, the benefit is you get to wait, right? So you get to wait for all the results in Carabao Cup or EFL Cup. And then based on that, you can just select the assistant manager who has a double game week fixture. So again, because prices are not changing and it's fairly static, even if you do play AM in 24, it's not going to change much because you will always spend a free transfer no matter what. If it's Unai, you're going to be spending 0.8. If it's Marco Silva, it's 1.1. If it's Slot, it's 1.5. So at the end of the day, I just think it's clearly down to preferences rather than raw expected value, because I don't think we have a full enough horizon to use that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I briefly sort of went live on this, and my thoughts are, I think I would still triple captain 24, and then AM 25, but I can see the point on you never know how bad the future triple captains are, and that is quite significant because Salah is Salah, and you won't necessarily get that sort of value back. And then the point on Moyes is, I think, super fair. But yeah, I think if you can sort of slam the chip on Slot now, it also feels quite good. The only drawback is going to be if Tottenham do a madness at Anfield, which is still probable, and I think that's kind of the risk with going with Slot, right? Because a lot of people are provisionally expecting that you don't have to transfer out Slot when actually there's going to be a world where you might have to transfer out Slot, and that's actually pretty bad because you're maybe down a Liverpool player compared to most when it comes to, let's say, that Wolves at home game. Whereas the people who have triple Liverpool in the outfield will always have that, I suppose, and then going forwards will enjoy triple Liverpool. So part of that is also like a looking into whether you're going to free hit and commit into certain free hit strategies as well. Because I think once again, Slot is not an outfield player, and if you have 3 outfield Liverpool players, that has a soft impact on 29. I do like the triple captain though, as I said, because you just never know what's going to happen with the other doubles. And I think, as you mentioned rightly with Moyes and what his value is now, you can probably get close to that with a good single. Like even when I look at, let's say, this week alone, you're not too far off with Herzler, and you're not too far off on 26 with Arteta in some of the singles that we can already see that we think are confirmed. And I'm sure that's going to be the same case later down the line, because we still have teams really low on the table that we think don't deserve to be there, and we have some teams equally quite high on the table that we think, not necessarily don't deserve to be there, but at least you can say you think you can proffer from a home game versus them, that sort of thing. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I think, yeah, the chip strategy tool, looking at some of the outputs from some of my friends like yourself, looks very, very strange. So it's very hard to kind of make a decision off of that. And you don't have 36 as well, which is tricky when it comes to kind of guessing what the value of your chips are. And I think that's probably more of the issue, right? You can't see how you're proffering from 36 if you don't AM now. And
yeah,
I think it's AM now or next week for most managers, to be honest. And I think that's as simple as it gets. And then the consideration of, for those people with a lot of free transfers, is I can probably take a step back this week, not go so heavily into investing into Everton, because once again, just like this week with the provisional potential, you also have the potential of Tottenham reversing odds, or even a crazy thing like we can still see Arsenal, I suppose, reverse a crazy tie, although that is extremely unlikely. And so once again, if you're with a lot of free transfers, that can help you out a lot. So those are kind of my provisional thoughts. I would definitely just want to go Slot if I had double Liverpool. If I had triple Liverpool, I probably would go Moyes, unless I had like 5 free transfers and I really wanted to go Slot for some reason. But I think we're already starting to see solvers spit out Moyes as a very strong pick, because I think one of the nice things about Moyes is, it's that whole thing about there's some uncertainty still with Slot. And I mean, really, if that uncertainty comes about, you're still probably going to want to go Silva, all managers. And so it's not necessarily the case that Moyes is always just +1 free transfer. I think as of right now, we can't say that that's the case. It's a very interesting landscape, and I have to say I've been royally screwed by it, but that is my fault and mine alone. Any other thoughts?
So one more thing on Moyes, which is that, okay, I understand the table bonus and everything else is already baked into EV, but I also think that if you want to look at variability of outcomes, I would, as like the chip is designed for table bonus.
True.
Is what it seems like, based on the insane bonus that you get for drawing a game and winning a game. So it's +5, +10 for just a reminder.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't see how you wouldn't want to take advantage of that mechanic of the chip.
Yeah.
Because like you said, so Bournemouth, for example, is the best case, right? They absolutely deserve to be where they are, because they are equivalent to that on the XGD and XG tables. So it's not that this is a fluke season. They've actually put up the underlying stats to back that up.
Yeah, I think we probably think they're a top 4 team, top 3 team even.
Absolutely. Like, and so the question is, someone like, for example, Slot, who is going to play Bournemouth, I still want, if you want to go Slot, like you said, if you have 2 Liverpool and you can go Slot, I would still like to go for that, because there's no longer the advantage of gaining table bonus by picking Iraola over Slot. Or to be honest, Iraola is never going to get table bonus at this point. So I just feel like there's even more of an incentive, in a sense, to pick teams that we feel, like you said, are perhaps not performing to their team strength standards, both in terms of underlying stats and in terms of actual stats. So Moyes is I think perfect for that reason, and also because he's cheap as chips. That's also a very good reason because you don't need to spend a lot of money.
Yeah. Although, yeah, you're gonna have to transfer out of Moyes anyway, so you do
Yeah.
still need a little bit of money in the bank.
No,
Yeah.
I'm saying, for example, if you have no free transfer this week and you don't want to take a hit, you have, let's say, 0.5.
Yeah.
So you go for Moyes, next week you get a free transfer, you get more money out of any position, and then you go for, but that's another minus for anyway. So I mean, there's pros and cons of doing that, but because that's what my team is set up to be. That's why I'm thinking of that, because in any case, I have to take a hit in either this week or next week. So
I have to take a hit
it's
this
gonna
week
be...
and next week. How good is that? That's good gameplay.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. No, I mean, yeah, and I think the value to slot, with the table bonus aside, is that Liverpool have been so dominant a team. Like, there's no team remotely close to them this season in terms of like the kind of underlyings they're spitting out. So it makes sense that even amongst bad fixtures, you've got slot looking like a G. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's scoot on over to the assistant manager chip points graphic. This is presented by Elevenify.com. You'll find it on his website, where he has his own model, a team model, and he also has a fast fantasy model as well, if you're interested, which looks at players. But I think it's not too distant from what we've seen from some of the Robert T projections from market, and also not too distant from what Review has in terms of projections. I think it's pretty strong, to be honest, on slot compared to, let's say, maybe how Review rates slot for this game week, and then I think it's also equally quite strong on Moyes as well, compared to Review. So quite interesting. I think there's a bit of a gap more so on Everton, but that's only a good thing, I suppose. If you're someone who's looking at Moyes right now, you're already getting Moyes in yourselves, and you suddenly see another model that's performed really well, respecting Moyes for the manager that he is. I don't know whether the probabilities are baked into 25 and to 25, to be honest, because I'm sure they are, as opposed to them being binary. So you can only expect Marco Silva to go higher, I imagine. What do you think?
That is what I was thinking, that Marco Silva probably would be even higher,
which is crazy.
And it's that's
crazy how good Marco Silva could be. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking the same thing, but unfortunately, because Spurs are so low in the table, again, because I've already spoken about table bonus and my proclivity towards trying to get that, I think Ange could also end up being the play if Spurs managed to hold on to the first leg.
I can't see it because Marco Silva has Nottingham Forest at home already, and
that is also true.
The EV is just gigantic. And they're at home. Fulham are at home, which is so nice.
Yeah, both games are at home, right?
Yeah, for Fulham, yeah. Just like both Everton games are at home. And then on 26, I've seen quite different numbers. But Elevenify very high on Arsenal. So once again, a little bit of an edge compared to, I think, where Review had him. Arteta, that is. So I think the general strategy, though, as we said, is, you go Moyes, you're prepared to use a free transfer. Silva, Emery both look great as it stands, and it could get better for both. Whereas with Slot, I mean, it could get a lot worse. It could get slightly better, but I can't imagine that it'll be that much better, because we're already expecting Liverpool to go through and advance, compared to, let's say, Fulham with much less of a chance, and Arsenal basically we're holding close, like sub 20% chance to get a double this game week. Any thoughts on 26? Like you mentioned table bonus. This is obviously one of those beat down games, as you can see on the upper end with Arteta. Would you still be someone who would lean towards like a table bonus game?
I'm less inclined for 26 compared to 24 and 25, because given that there are two games, I can at least hope for one very, let's say, like a very extreme outcome, at least in one of those games. But because 26 is just a single game week, I don't think I will be there. And like you pointed out, I think Arsenal, in any case, I was thinking Arsenal had a good enough game, but Elevenify actually has Arsenal much higher than what Review has, relatively speaking. So that would actually make sense to even go to Arteta you do have the money there. Another thing I was thinking was, let's say you go, and this is unfortunately not a part of this graphic, but if you decide to go 25, 26, 27, because you play triple captain in 24, the 27 game week is actually dire, because I was having a look at the fixtures, and the best EV you can get is the Wolves game. So it's the Wolves manager you have to bring in as assistant manager, which
is it not? Don't Chelsea have like Southampton at home?
I think it's because it's assuming that you buy Jackson. You buy Jackson, so I would be tripled up on them. So that's actually a fair point.
Okay,
that's actually a fair point. Most people would not be tripled up even if they do buy Jackson.
I see.
So you are right there. So if you don't own triple Chelsea, then definitely I think that's the play. Because by that point we will also know if Arsenal, Chelsea, I mean, they will have played their game, right? If Arsenal do manage to overturn the deficit. Yeah. So it doesn't even matter then. You already know if they're blanking or not. So it becomes very, very easy to make that decision.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm actually now that you mentioned it, I've got Palmer. I'm probably going to go Jackson on 27, based on all the stupid moves that I've set up for myself. And that does look like a good game though, and probably that's also why 25 AM looks quite strong on some solves too, because I think for a single game it's pretty strong. It's better than actually any of the games we get in 26, right, on the upper end. So I'd be curious to see what Elevenify has spitting out for 27. But on early review,
let me quickly check if he has it on his site right now, just so we can compare.
Check the site out anyways.
Yeah, some numbers. Yeah, sorry, bear with me while I do this. But what is this? Oh, okay.
We could always ask him for it.
I am. He's gifted me the members access, but I don't think I'm signed out now, so I'm not able to access it.
I've paid for the full thing, and I don't think I quite see it right now. So
okay.
Maybe
we'll get that
from him for those who are interested. Because I think it is an interesting part of strategy, right? Because you go triple captain 24 this game week. Fine, you might not really see. I think you can already see that most of the field is going to assist the manager 24, and you can already right now grab that differential EV, which I quite like. If you have the triple captain left, so that's quite interesting and intriguing. But yeah, for myself, locked into this double hit strategy. So good, as they say. Any other thoughts in terms of chip strategy? So we've spoken about assistant manager, triple captain, but your thoughts on free hit, maybe going back to the calendar. Are you set into a free hit strategy right now, or where you landed on?
So sorry, can you repeat that? I lost audio.
Where are you landed on in terms of your free hit strategy as a result of all these kind of announcements and some of your moves this week? Are you set on a free hit strategy, or still quite open?
Very, very tricky situation, because again, I'm considering 2 free hit game weeks. I think most people are 29 and 34.
Yeah.
So right now, based on, like, I think we've discussed this before, but because I don't have any value baked into Salah, I still want to not play free hit in 29.
Yeah.
For that only reason. So I'm still trying to get out of it. And one of the steps I would be taking is transferring Gordon out this week or next week. Most probably next week. Because then I would automatically be setting myself up for only Isaac between Newcastle and Crystal Palace, and assuming obviously that Arsenal don't win by more than 2 goals. But let's assume that happens. And the other moves I would need to make is something like Salah out, obviously, and then perhaps Trent out. It would be on the cards. And then I think I can scrape by. So again, that leaves me very short on free transfers, as has been the case ever since I made the triple move to move from Mbeumo to Saka. And then Saka did nothing for 3 weeks and then got injured. So I haven't actually recovered from that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know anything beyond that point, but yeah, still firmly trying to avoid free hit 29. I think you're the opposite, right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of leaning for it 29 because obviously I'm invested into Munoz, Hall, and Isak, and then triple Liverpool. But I do have Flecken, so that's technically double. And I do have Rogers, so that's another problem. So yeah, I'm quite invested into these teams. Not that it's very hard to move out of them in free transfers because when I make this move of Bruno to Dango next week, I can go wherever I really want to with money, and I think I'd be quite free to just happily spend my free transfers because instead of, let's say, making myself take on a decision like Isak to Jackson on 29, because I'm going to skip Watkins out anyways, I'm going to go Ndiaye to Jackson on 27, sorry. And I'm going to Isak to, sorry, I'm going Ndiaye to Jackson definitely on 26.
27.
No, it is 27. Yeah, sorry, you're right. No, yeah, 27. Yeah. And after that, I don't really have too many moves to make. So it will be a case of, yeah, do I want to bin off the Salah and Isak or even Hall value because I'm actually so invested in these players.
You're right.
And one of the things that I do find hard to quantify is when we don't have the full fixture slate. I suppose this is something that I'll have to just revisit after I make my Dango move. But when I finally have the chance to make that Jackson move on 27, I assume I make that move on all lines. But then the question will be, do I run solves at that point so that on 28, when we have a lot of these FA Cup outcome impacts, do I just commit anyways to free at 29 without really knowing, I guess, how bad my wildcard will be impacted from a monetary point of view? That will be interesting, I think. But what I'll probably do then is run a lot of wildcard solves for, let's say, a wildcard 35, and then compare that to some of my wildcard solves for, let's say, a wildcard 30. And then also just look at some of the chip strategy solver stuff from review and make a decision there. But intuitively, of course, it would be nice to carry through a lot of the money in the bank because, as you can see, even in this graphic here, we've got pretty high chances of seeing teams like Liverpool and Newcastle doubling anyways, and so keeping value in those players is probably going to be quite beneficial for me. Is kind of where I'm at. But you made a good point about double game week 36. I mean, if I do a late wild card, I mean, that's not going to be, it could be quite a poor bench boost, all things considered, which is something that I think is another significant piece to that wild card aspect. And one of the things that I find interesting is since I'm going to be blowing my assistant manager in triple captainship, I do wonder if some divergent strategies might pop up for myself because I'm free of those two key chips. And I could do something a little bit silly, like, I don't know, wild carding into, who knows, 33, 34, that sort of territory, just so I can bench boost quick and then maybe make sense and some value out of it, given the FA Cup outcomes are mostly known, I would say, around 28. So that could change, I think, when I wild card, but I think I'm leaning for it 29 myself.
So you could still, if you free 29, I think wildcard 30 becomes slightly difficult because that's the whole point of not using wildcard. You would have just exactly. So you could potentially still do wildcard 32, bench boost 33, right? That would still be on the cards.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense, I think.
All right. Shall we do a small little xMins corner? I don't think there's anything too controversial this week, but I do find it interesting to maybe just jump into the discussion of which Bournemouth midfielder do you think is actually the best. So any sort of initial takes on that?
I think my opinion about the Bournemouth mid is pretty firm that Dango is the best midfielder from Bournemouth because he's played very inconsistently across positions, and his XGI or XG rather per 90 this season has been insane. Like you've already pointed out, he's second only to Salah in XG per 90.
It's crazy. So I was actually looking at Gameweek 21, and I was looking at the season-long list of players, and I think in terms of midfielders, he was second. Like he was ahead of Palmer and npxG,
midfielder, sorry,
which is mental.
Absolutely.
And that was before playing center forward as well, where I think we've seen a bit of a tick up again. And you can see the modeling impacts like kick in. Like I remember when Semenyo first got his like
What's the
fake
highest?
little center forward share boost. He looks like an absolute god, because obviously the minutes were always going to be good for him. But then Dango, it seems like just baseline has the best sort of projections. I haven't really seen whether there's a bit of a disparity on all three of them when it comes to review versus market. I don't know if you've looked into that yourself, but yeah, I'm intuitively drawn to Dango. We do have one of the niche things, I suppose, is the deadline does close on Gameweek 24 before the transfer deadline does, and they could still bring in a player, but obviously he's come off a hat trick. Don't want to be too grassy, but that's important, I suppose.
It is
on evaluating these sorts of things. So yeah, I really like Dango. A lot of people might be forced to just make a move towards him this week, and Kluivert, I think, is set to go on another price rise. So I think, yeah, that just makes Dango super intriguing to me. I'll definitely be on Dango if they don't make another move for an attacker in this window, because I can just see him playing center forward / left wing. And it seems like he also physically is more fit than Kluivert, just in terms of pressing actions and being able to stay on for 90 minutes, that kind of thing. So yeah, he's a lovely player. But that doesn't discount how good Semenyo and Kluivert still are. Like, ideally, I think we would actually be owning two of these players, because I would say the second or third best Bournemouth midfielder is still better than, let's say, an Ahmad right now, I think. And even maybe, let's say, a Rodgers, especially after Rodgers.
If Rodgers didn't have this potential double game week, I would agree. But given the fact that Aston Villa Liverpool is potentially going to be in 25, I slightly would edge it towards Rodgers. But still, you're not wrong there. I mean, Kluivert and Dango seems like a lovely double up till, I don't know, being wild
that's
card,
an interesting thing, though. Would you be? I've seen some people already committing moves towards Aston Villa players. Are you against that, or is that just more, you think, something that you should do if you've got a lot of free transfers banked?
Yes, short answer is yes. But I was thinking about it, even though I have one free transfer right now. I was thinking about potentially getting Martinez in, but the problem with that is it's such a flimsy move that if the double doesn't happen, then I'm actually left with nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't think Martinez's fixtures are so amazing that he can get me over whatever EV I would have gained if I had saved that free transfer for 1 week. So even though it is Wolves away and followed by potentially a double game week, I still think it's better to wait. It's better to wait for Bournemouth mids because they play Liverpool anyway, and it's better to wait for any Aston Villa pixie as well. But if you do own them already, I think this is an amazing fixture, right? I mean, Rodgers just scored a hat-trick versus Celtic, and Duran has left the club now officially. So again, it's just going to be incredible 90 minutes almost every game. Because you do see the odd game where he gets subbed around 70, but it's not going to be that often, I think.
Yeah, I think actually, Watkins he's a very strong pick, but then it's one of those things where it's going to be a comparison to those midfielders again.
So you own Rodgers, right? So maybe people would say that you are being partial, but I don't own him, so I'm neutral here.
Fair.
I think one more penalty miss, and there's legitimately a case of Rodgers taking penalties.
Over Tielemans as well? Or you think that could fall back to him?
That's actually a fair point. And
I think, to be fair, yeah, if you're going to start taking people off pens because they're missing, like, yeah, fine. Give it to Rodgers, the U21 pen taker specialist.
I'm inclined to think there's going to be some penalty share for Rodgers. It's never going to be 100%, but
yeah.
And Watkins is just a bad penalty taker. I mean, it's so clear at this point. Even the penalty he scored versus Brighton, I owned him in that game, and I thought he would miss. Honestly, it's just a pain to watch him take a penalty. So I don't know.
The Brentford penalty?
No, the one against Brighton that he scored.
Did he not take one versus Brentford though? I think I do remember that, because I was an unhappy.
You see, he got a goal and an assist against Brighton when I owned him, and he blanked versus Leicester after that.
Fair. Maybe he's taken 2 penalties this season. I seem to remember one.
I think he's taken. Yeah, he has. Yeah. He's taken more than one.
And that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe both penalties were bad. Who knows? Yeah,
they could be.
Yeah, you're right. He's taken versus both. Okay. I can't remember the Brighton one too much, but I'm sure it was bad. Good, God bless him. One of the weird things about the forwards though is I think in a few weeks' time, actually, a lot of forwards are more viable. So you have like Cunha coming back with good fixtures, and then Wood eventually will have his bad fixture run ending around 29, right? So it's always going to be a question of, do you need to spend that sort of money on Watkins? But I think Watkins is like definitely a luxury transfer. He kind of reminds me of when people were doing their late wild card and people jumped onto Watkins for like 2 weeks when Duran was suspended. I think this is the same situation here where the fixtures are so good, you go for Watkins, but then he does probably become a sell after he doubles, if he doubles. But that's also quite a big risk. And well, either way, you will wait for that to crystallize next game week on Game Week 25. But yeah, I mean, I'm starting to be pretty pro just keeping Isak and then going free at 29 because I think it kind of just suits my team structure. The only thing that makes me sad about that is I haven't owned Eze, but then at the same time, I haven't owned Eze. So that's actually something that I can celebrate finally for this game week, whilst I've been totally in the mud. So yeah, shout out to owning injury-prone players, because I don't do that at all, ever. Never done that.
That's a good segue because this is xMins Corner, and I was going to talk about Aze's injury anyway, but yeah, I'm glad you cleared that up. I think for Spurs, I don't know if Van der Ven is back, but he did play 45 and he got subbed. I think it was a planned sub, although most pundits. Yeah, it was, right?
It was, yeah. It was confirmed as
a
planned sub.
Yeah, okay. Because a lot of pundits were slating slot Ange for making rather playing him, which I found to be very strange.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of it.
Football players have to play eventually to get back to match fitness, right? So it's one of those things.
Arteta said Raya is still.
You want to touch on Bruno? Your favorite CDM midfielder, also all around good player under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, or?
So yes, okay. So what Fran is alluding to is the fact that Bruno played essentially one of the 8s in the Europa League game.
Yeah.
Versus I already forgot their name, but FCSB.
Yeah, so Romanian team, Steaua Bucharest.
Yeah.
Or no.
Yeah, is it Steaua Bucharest? Oh,
no,
my god.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, sorry. I've totally nailed that one. Why wouldn't I?
Okay, fair enough.
I actually had some enhanced odds on that game, and I did decide to slam it on United with my bet credits, but that's a separate discussion.
Nice. That's a good one. So anyway, so he played 8 and Mainu played in one of the 10 positions, and Mainu actually ended up having a good game, even though it didn't start off quite well. But Fran has been very eager to point out to me that it was a Romanian team. It was the Europa League. So let's not put too much weightage into the fact
that game as well, for starters.
Yeah, and assisted. One goal, one assist for Mainu. And Amorim mentioned after the game as well that he liked how Mainu played in that game.
Yeah.
It's more of he does not trust Mainu in that role. And he clearly trusts Bruno more than all players other than Ugarte. Because Ugarte, I think, has nailed one of those roles. It's just a question of maintaining his workload. So if that's going to be the case, then again, obviously Bruno is going to be the sacrificial lamb and he's going to end up playing a deeper role, which is not bad because I don't think we were creating much anyway. So, penalties were always a huge part of his EV, but it does make it a worse watch. If you want to watch the game, rooting for him as an FPL asset, it is definitely a dire watch because he is nowhere close to the goal. He's making late runs that are being ignored more often than not by his teammates. So it's just he has to create something out of the blue, or he has to take pot shots, which he almost scored, to be fair to him. But it's a very low percentage shot that he took.
Yeah, I mean, you modeled, I guess, Pedro Goncalves, who's done a bit of both. And maybe any insights in terms of the positional 8 versus 10 on that?
That's actually an excellent comparison, right? Because Gonçalves has very similar career XG, XS stats to Bruno. Maybe there's some disparity either way, where Bruno has slightly more XA and Gonçalves maybe has slightly more npxG. But for the purposes of modeling, it's pretty similar. And like you said, I had assigned a weightage to him playing further behind and then in one of the 10s. when Amorim was still Sporting CP's manager. So what I found was, and again, my model is not as good as reviews, but just a cursory glance into sort of changes that happen in EV. When I put him at full 10, I didn't find as much of a shift in EV as I thought I would find. Which was a very strange thing, but again, this because there's so many intangibles that cannot be considered by a model, right? So I don't know if that was the reason, or if it's genuinely a case of we look at a game and we expect it to be more than what it actually should be in terms of the change in positions, because he's still on the pitch for 90 minutes, right? And I think that is much more important than some of the other factors, like where you end up playing. So very, very good question. And if I can find, because he hasn't played since MD1, Gonsalves, that is, in UCL, so I actually haven't had the chance to revisit that. If I do find the data, I'll definitely try to publish it. That's a good question.
Sounds good. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, shout out to your UCL fantasy model as well. You've got a Patreon for it. I believe it's in the description for the chat. So anyone interested in UCL fantasy, there is a model for you as well. But I think that's an interesting discussion, because obviously, like, a lot of people sold Bruno this week, but he remains a good option for Gimme29. Like, even when I was running free at 29, it still made sense for me to probably keep Bruno over Odegaard. And I think part of it is also just like me looking ahead. I don't know. I mean, Noneri is kind of on some set pieces. Odegaard's like the most charitable man in existence with penalties. Why? I don't know. And yeah, I mean, I still cannot believe he has a 15-goal season to his name in the Premier League. And he is like close to being allergic, I suppose, to scoring goals now. So that's not an eye test. That's just unfortunately how it's been, I think.
Yeah.
Odegaard, really. But I will miss owning him, because he got me a lot of interactions on X, and that's really it, because he didn't do anything on my FPL team. So yeah, an ode to Odegaard. Goodbye.
Odegaard.
See you hopefully never. I mean, who knows if he doubles next week, right? We're not gonna do a show this next week, because I don't have the heart to really talk about Martin Odegaard with the double, and me selling him for a hit. So yeah, let's just hope I'm a Newcastle fan right now. That's all I can say. Any thoughts on just United overall? Because I mean, we made a market point to kind of discuss their EV. I feel like we've seen shifts in both directions. Bruno still looks like a very healthy pick. So does Amad Diallo, to be quite honest. Do you have any thoughts on that, like, still, or is it just going back to the point where maybe we're just way too biased against United, and we don't apply the same sort of critical lens to all the other teams, I suppose?
I think I can say that for myself, but I would argue that most people who use expected value probably are fairly neutral, even though I know that when you start watching the games, it does become very hard to stay neutral. It does start influencing how you think about United players. And to a degree, I understand the skepticism, because we've discussed this to death, so I don't want to keep going there. That there's a huge volume of people betting on United, blah blah blah. So where we stand right now is, I think if we do end up buying the new left wing back, I don't know if Dalot is going to even have a secure spot every game week, because it just becomes a good way for Amorim to rotate between Mazraoui and Dalot. And let's say he wants to play Garnacho, what he can do is obviously bring Amad into into the right wing back position, and then play hopefully Bruno, but if not Bruno, then I guess Mainu now, based on what happened in the Europa League game. So there's a lot of combinations, and I don't think I would go for any United defender, given assuming that we do sign Patrick. If we don't, then I don't know. I think Dalot then again becomes extremely nailed. I don't see how he does not play a single game. So if we get to February 3rd and we see that we United didn't sign any left wing backs, then I would then look at Dalot again as perhaps a legitimate pick.
Yeah, I think Fabrizio did drop a tweet about how Dorgups played his final game So we'll see.
It's probably done.
That gets deleted
from
by
what I've been
Fabrizio.
seeing. Yeah.
But
that's
yeah,
fair.
I mean, there's nothing too controversial explains. I feel like we're actually in a landscape where unfortunately you're forced once again into transfers just based on fixtures and outcomes there, and unfortunately that does make the game a little bit boring, and I think also unfortunately there's just nothing controversial when it comes to minutes to talk about. So
I think maybe we can cover
maybe
some...
Gakpo actually. Sorry, going back to that.
Yeah.
Were you surprised to find out about the Jota news? Because that's something that I think a lot of people haven't discussed at all today when it comes to Jota being in training, I believe, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So that's definitely new news. Any thoughts on that?
I don't think anyone was surprised when Gakpo went to PSV.
Yeah.
I always paint that as something that would happen because I bought Gakpo in Sun Dream Team, which is a game that also has Champions League, Premier League, and all the cup fixtures. So I needed him to play both games. So it ended up happening that way. But of course, an early sub was always on the card, so he did get sub pre-60.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if I were to ask any Liverpool fan, I think most of them are still confident that he starts both games. How many minutes he plays is a different conversation because there's legitimately a case to be made that he plays 60 and 60 in both games. But because I saw today's news, I'm now thinking the 60-60 could easily be 30-90, which could be. I don't think I've assigned a lot of weightage when I changed the xMins, but...
Wait, you're thinking this double or potentially the next one?
The next one.
Okay,
one. Yeah. Assuming that they do double. Because if Jota is barely in training right now, I don't think there's a chance he plays. He starts one of the games, but yeah, there's definitely a chance in 25. But I think most people who bought Gakpo already got... I mean, the points obviously are there. Exactly, but they also get to have the expected value in 24, right? Which is what they wanted in the first place. So 25 is just an added bonus. If he doesn't start, it's still not that bad. I guess
does
prevents you from getting slot.
More slot considerations though, more so than someone who yeah.
I agree with that. If you have only 2 Liverpool players, I would probably go for slot over buying Gakpo this week.
That's fair. And what if you owned Gakpo though? Would that actually give you more incentive to transfer out?
Not really, because I think if you value free transfer as they should be, there is simply no reason to do that. I think there's enough EV in Gakpo's minutes to still hold him for potentially both double game weeks. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you think differently, but I just don't see any reason to do that.
I guess I'm in agreement with you, just because of how strong Moyes plus a free transfer is.
Yeah,
and if you're going to
exactly
free transfer out Gakpo,
yeah.
I guess it also depends on what, like, if you're like 0.2 in the bank, you've got to do a free transfer anyways to get to Moyes. But yeah, that kind of thing is interesting. I think that's it really in terms of. Mm-hmm.
There's a fair small tidbits. Like for example, Villa, there's only Konsa for consideration if you want to have an Aston Villa doubler, a potential doubler, because there's no other fit defender. So
you don't believe in Luka Dean?
Yeah, I also mentioned the fact that Dean played centre back against Celtic, so
and he was awful. Was he actually playing for centre back? I thought he had actually been pushed wide again in that game.
He was. I think it was a part of the game where he was playing centre back, and then he got
because I remember I saw the starting lineups,
yeah.
But obviously, unfortunately, I can't watch 18 football games at once.
Nah.
Yeah.
It was so bad that I don't think I ended up watching a single one properly. Like I don't remember anything of note from any of those games.
I just remember some of our goals, and that's it. Okay, I think maybe on Everton defenders, we can probably briefly touch on that. O'Brien looks really strong. So does Mikolenko, I think, because we just haven't seen much transfer market activity in that direction. Sure, of course, maybe they could be unsafe for Gameweek 29, but I have to imagine that's the least of your priorities. And to be fair, if you do have that flexibility, then you just go Tarkowski, right? If you have any doubt whatsoever, you really need that player playing on 29, then fine, just go Tarkowski. But that is a fair bit of expenditure. For now, I think all of those options are pretty strong, because it seems like the one deal they'll probably seal is the Carlos Alcaraz deal, who is just going to play attacking mid for them. In what specific position, I think we'll find out, because he's quite flexible as a player. Like I've seen him played all across, and I think unfortunately they're also not promoting so much depth, I think, right now, and we'll see what happens with him. But that's interesting. I guess one of the topics that I wanted to discuss as well was last question, maybe on just Arsenal defenders. Are you quite interested in owning heavy into the Arsenal defense going forwards? Because a recent trend was a lot of us selling Arsenal defenders. Do you think you'd ever be making moves back into them anytime soon?
I think once we understand the double game, or rather the fixtures in Gameweek 29, I think there's definitely a world where I can sell Gabriel, because I know this is a discussion point from earlier in the season where I think Trout put out a post that if you didn't own 3, it's better to own none, or something of that nature, when people were debating going into Saka and double defense. So I don't think much has changed on that front. I still think if Raya is injured, that's a different situation, by the way, because we still don't know if Raya is going to play. He probably will, given the fact that Arteta is a class A waffler. I don't see how how he doesn't play. But and also because it's Man City, I don't think Neto. I don't know if people saw his error versus Girona.
Was a good one.
But my God, that's a bad mistake. It's just the gap is substantial. It's no. I mean, I think the gap between the Ramsdale and Raya at this point is also substantial. But at least on the face of it, they were maybe comparable goalkeepers where you could at least play Ramsdale without a lot of hesitation. I don't think that's the case now. So even if there's a niggling injury, I think Raya will play. So
I mean, to be fair, shout out to Arteta for dropping that speech about how he wanted to sub goalkeepers mid-game, because that was crazy.
Yes, that was.
The only person who's actually mad is De Zerbi, and I guess, I don't know, he's a bit of a weird person himself. Maybe we don't need to. Maybe that's a segment for another day. But I think.
Anyway, coming back to your point, I would definitely try to offload defenders if I could, but it also depends on what the Gameweek 29 fixture is. So if I'm not free hitting, then assuming the Arsenal game still remains in 29, I'll probably have to keep them. And I think you will have to as well, because I don't know. You're free hitting, right? So you might actually go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see. I mean, I really do like Arsenal fans. I was actually just wondering, maybe there's a world where I go double up, but it's just a case of right now we don't really need a lot of money in the game, and I say this as someone who had to take a hit so that I could buy an assistant manager, but hey, happens to the best of us, I guess. Oh god. I think that's it for xMins. Anything else to add in terms of xMins?
No, I was just looking at teams to check if we had any other, but I suppose Beto is the only sort of strange pick this game week.
I mean, I feel like one of the weird things actually is, good point on Beto, because a lot of people have been considering doubling up on the Everton strike force, and I do think, look, I mean, you're going to get one of those two players playing probably in a few weeks' time, and if the sole purpose of going to those two players is for them to play this week, you're going to get the value back immediately. So I don't really see why there's so much reticence around it. Maybe like with the Doucouré thing, I think, I can understand why people are reticent, because the alternative is you just go for a Bournemouth midfielder. In the forward position, all the forwards right now in the budget positions are kind of awful, especially at that price point. Who knows? I mean, Raul could double, of course, but I think, it's really just João Pedro, right, that you're selling. Maybe all I would encourage is running João Pedro at high minutes, because he should be playing high minutes, and then actually reconsidering whether actually still the double Everton forward move is kind of optimal per se, and that's it. It just makes sense as a move, because like even with myself, like I'm happy going NDI because I'll just go Jackson eventually, and I'm sure a lot of people will eventually be also shipping off that Everton forward into another position, another sort of player of strength, because since the Bournemouth midfielders will be extremely relevant over the next 2 to 3 weeks, all you need to do is spend less money in the midfield position to be able to then get rid of those Everton forwards. So I don't know. That's kind of where my thoughts are on that. it is pretty dire, I think, the forward landscape, to be fair. Outside of maybe like Wisa, I can't even think of any good use of transfers. And then it's Watkins next week, and frankly, pretty boring until Jackson on 27.
Yeah, I think you've covered it very well.
Great. Let's just do quick chat Q&A. Lou for Blizzard saying FPL Doggy double bogey is finished. He always has been. Mo saying the David Moyes penitentiary is waiting for visitors. I mean, honestly, the visitors are Liverpool, so look forward to that, my friend. Adam702 saying shit. Sorry, I just swore. But Peak FPL made all his free transfers already, so very much like myself, in a way, to get Wisa and Boomerhausen, and he's now cooked. Yeah, fair enough. So am I. Christopher saying, what are our thoughts on Pep in 26? Pep in 26 is very strong. The issue is table bonus, because you're not getting table bonus because Man City are now getting points on the board. Now, if Man City somehow drop points to Arsenal, I think there's maybe a possibility that they can still find themselves with table bonus, but Pep on 26, I think, has to be someone that you would go for purely for table bonus, if it's there, because it's still Liverpool at the end of the day, and you're not expecting much. So, for example, if you just get a draw for that game and you're not going to get the benefit of table bonus, I mean, that's pointless.
Oh, it's so bad. Yeah,
Lars
it's so bad.
saying Salah triple cap this week was always very weak. To an extent, yes, but then I think you always have to compare it to the next best triple captain. And unfortunately, there's not some sort of comparative double that's amazing. And so that's kind of what makes it tricky.
Would you agree that rather than the fixtures, which I don't care because the expected value is always there.
Yeah.
It's more, I think, the gap between the fixtures.
True.
We've never had this situation where the two games are so far apart that they are actually
and the Tottenham game is so important, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, why would you not want to be in another cup final, I guess?
And it's not like Klopp, right? Because Klopp never gave any importance to Carabao Cup until a certain point, and then he won it. So it's not that he didn't care about it at all, but it was clearly a secondary thought for him. But with Slot, I'm thinking he's preferring at least being competent in all cups, which I just think makes me feel like Salah's definitely going to play 90 in that game, or close to 90 at least.
Yeah.
And then I know it's just a midweek game, and then he's obviously back to next week. So hopefully it won't impact him, but there is definitely an uncertainty which we've never had previously.
I think it's nice that they got that Champions League rest, and obviously they get further rest because of how they position themselves, like table wise in the Champions League. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Let's see. I do generally agree on the point that Marcus made, though, that if you're not subscribed to Script, you are missing out. True. But yeah, Lars made also a fair point in terms of silver over slot on 25. That just really depends on whether it is a double, though, right? Let's see. Charlie mentioning whether we'd take a -4 for JP to NDI. I definitely would not make that move whatsoever. That's because NDI is pretty much unplayable after this game week, whereas JP very much is. Why did I sell Odegaard tonight? Not him or Mbeumo rising. Look, honestly, I couldn't be bothered anymore. That's the simple, honest reason. If I wake up and there's 3 or 4 players injured, fine, whatever. I'm just tired, had a bad week at work, and just wanted to make some moves. I felt like it. Not good play, by the way. Wouldn't promote it, but hey. Can AMs rise in price? I don't think so. I think that's been confirmed as well.
Yeah.
Some of the chat, I think, has already been kind of discussed. Marco's going Dango, which I think is a very solid pick. I feel like it's hard for Dango to go brutally wrong as a pick because he's just a good player with good minutes for a good team, and right now seems unlikely they're going to get a center forward that will just kind of completely depose him somehow. I think it's less likely they get a CF, but who knows?
No, but even if they do, we've already discussed the fact that he's really had insane underlying stats from his left wing position.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even matter if he plays center forward.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, he's just brilliant as a pick. And so I don't know if Marco is going there this week, but my only reason is I'm trying to delay it to next week because I don't know. I just want to be doubly sure, and Liverpool at home is not a great game picture anyway. So I
mean that's kind of why I did, because so I went to Mbeumo today, and in general for this game week, knowing that I'd take a future hit, because ultimately when I ran Dango's minutes really high, it was still competitive to go on Bumo, and he just has a better fixture, so intuitively it always feels better. And then obviously I can leave myself with the ability to sort of assess whatever transfer window movements Bournemouth make, even though it's very unlikely to actually impact me negatively.
Makes sense.
Righty says, yeah, it's nice to see you around, Righty, actually, so thanks for joining on the stream.
Yeah.
Mo making the
joining.
very poignant comment that Jota's come back as soon as the Team of the Year promotion's over. I packed Team of the Year Aitana Bonmati this morning, so shout out to myself, really, for not spending FIFA points on this game, but finally getting a good player. Yeah, well done.
Not playing FC 25.
All grown up.
That's the biggest win this season for me.
I'm
spending my time playing Pokemon TCG Pocket.
The thing is, when there's not like a challenge event in that game, I just don't have any motivation to play. What have you been doing? AI battles? Come on now.
No, I am farming all the shop tickets.
Fine. I'll allow it.
That's the only thing.
I think that's acceptable.
Yeah.
What am I farming? Nothing right now. I'm farming actually those kind of like intermediate expert battles, etc. Because
that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
But
I finished that. I'm on to the expert ones. Those are crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't. I tend to AI battle with my Mewtwo deck, if anyone cares, but that's not really FPL. Jeff Z says Moyes with Gakpo is surely better than slot with NDI at -4. I agree with that entirely. I would just go Moyes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. I think the only way that you'd go Gakpo to slot is if you are in some sort of luxury land, which some people are, fair enough, where you've got 3 to 5 free transfers and suddenly it's a very easy move and you don't have to take a hit. It's not involved, and maybe you have the opportunity to, you know, have slot with the double, or you just move to Marco Silva anyways and you win, right? And pure EV because you just have that bank of free transfers, and that's fine.
One thing that you also mentioned before, but Jota being back is actually better in a sense for slot as AM, because the more uncertainty in xMins for players in the team, the better the assistant manager becomes. So it's in that sense it is, but we don't know if Liverpool have 2 doubles. So before we know that, it's still a gamble. So if you don't have 5 free transfers like Fran said, I find it really odd that you would spend free transfers on that. Hits on that.
Yeah. Who to downgrade for Moyes AM?
So Marco is saying he's downgrading Eze because he needs slot.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And unfortunately, of course, Eze is injured as well.
Yeah.
Look at him. He needs slot. Sure, just go and get so much EV. Fine. Okay. I think someone did post their team. And just having a brief look at the team, you've got no free transfers. You've got Beto. I think you could take a hit for Bruno out and then potentially just go into Moyes if you want to go for the AM strategy, because I don't really like going Alisson out to go for slot. So that's what I would do. The alternative, I suppose, is you could just wait for next week and then AM 25, but I don't think it makes sense when you have triple captain and you're not using it. So yeah, AM now, take a hit, go out of Bruno, probably, or just AM next week if you got triple captain. That's my thoughts. I think that's it for the stream. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Really interesting game week. Lots of decisions to make, I think, for managers. I think whether you're sort of driven from an EV approach or just generally speaking. Yeah. Thank you for being here at 11:08 p.m. UK time, or whatever it is, wherever around the world you are. Thanks for myself.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.